The Federal Reserve raised short-term interest rates by 3/4 of a percentage point yesterday, matching the increase at the previous two meetings. The action is designed to fight inflation, but Americans who need to borrow money are seeing loan rates go up. The latest rate move pushes the benchmark short-term lending rate to a range of 3 to 3.25%. Savers will be the big winners as they can earn more interest on their checking, savings, CDs, money market accounts, and government bonds. Borrowers are the losers of the Fed's action. The average loan rate for a used car was around 4.5% at the start of this year. Now it's at 5.5%. Mortgage rates are double what they were a year ago. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, some Tesla owners will need to get repair work done after more than 1 million vehicles were recalled. Officials say the windows in these Teslas don't stop rolling up, and they also retract quickly when an object is detected, which could pose a potential injury hazard to people inside the vehicle. Among those affected by the recall, Tesla Model 3s from 2017 through 2022 and Model S vehicles from 2021 and 2022. Tesla says the issue can be fixed with a software update and they will be free of charge. Up next, something new that could help people dealing with the most common form of arthritis.